transition from 2D to 3D was a hard one for Sonic, and the series lost a lot of its focus in the process by trading in speed for action-adventure elements and introducing an unnecessary and unnecessarily large supporting cast of characters. Sonic Heroes is truer to its 2D roots than any other 3D Sonic game before it, but unfortunately, it seems that the Xbox and PlayStation 2 versions of the game didn't really receive the care that the superior GameCube version did. Sonic Heroes strips out a lot of the filler found in Sonic Adventure games, but it retains the large cast of characters. The game gives you control of 3 characters at once and divides the characters up into 4 different teams: Team Sonic, Team Dark, Team Rose, and Team Chaotix. Each team member has his or her own strengths, and your abilities as a team change depending on which character you have set as the team leader. The team members are color-coded for easy reference, so blue characters have the most speed, yellow characters can fly, and red characters can bust through blocks that are otherwise impenetrable. You can easily change the leader on the fly, and once you've mastered the different team formation abilities, swapping out team leaders becomes second nature. The inclusion of the 4 different teams seems a bit pointless, since the game is virtually identical with all 4 of the teams. To be blunt, no one cares about these peripheral characters that Sonic Team seems hell-bent on pushing on gamers. People play Sonic games to play as Sonic the Hedgehog. For the most part, Sonic Heroes tries its hardest to recapture the hectic pace of the classic Sonic the Hedgehog games. You'll race down lots of narrow paths that are loaded with speed strips, corkscrews, and loops. You'll bounce off of strategically placed bumpers, you'll grind along miles of rails that seem to be suspended in thin air, and you'll frantically try to outrun pursuing enemies and rising lava levels. Many of the different level themes, which include Sonic staples like the Sandy Beach, the Sparks and Fire Factory, and the ever-popular casino-inspired pinball machine levels, will feel familiar to Sonic fans. The level designs are pretty straightforward, though you'll occasionally find portions that aren't entirely intuitive, which can lead to some awkward moments. Moreover, it's likely that you'll find yourself plummeting into a bottomless nothing without any idea of what you did wrong more than once. The game's not terribly long, and most players should be able to wrap it up in around 6 hours. Fortunately, it is free of the bad action-adventure filler that made up large portions of the Sonic Adventure games, thereby providing a more satisfying overall experience. When Sonic Heroes works the way it's supposed to, the action is fast and exciting. Unfortunately, the game suffers from a problematic finicky camera, occasionally spastic controls, and some bad clipping. The camera is largely stationary, and this works well most of the time. But on the off chance that you want to get a better perspective of your surroundings before you make a potentially death-defying leap, the camera is uncooperative and will snap to a first-person perspective if you try to move it more than a few degrees. Additionally, the camera will often snap to a dramatic faraway angle when you're running along a giant loop or performing some other grand maneuver, which can be problematic as the game is inconsistent about the relativity of the camera position to the controls. So it can be hard to know if pushing up on the analog stick will keep you moving forward or if it will cause you to fly off of the track. Aside from these camera and control issues, clipping difficulties will invariably leave you wedged behind some piece of level geometry, or, even worse, you'll be pushed through the platform, thus leaving you to fall to your doom. Sonic Team hasn't bothered to do much with the graphics engine that powered the Sonic Adventure games, except to repurpose it for Sonic Heroes, so the whole thing looks like a glorified Dreamcast game. Unlike the GameCube version released earlier this month, both the Xbox and PlayStation 2 versions of the game suffer from inconsistent frame rates, with the PlayStation 2 version barely able to eke out 30 frames per second under optimal conditions. Unlike the GameCube version released earlier this month, both the Xbox and PlayStation 2 versions of the game suffer from inconsistent frame rates, with the PlayStation 2 version barely able to eke out 30 frames per second under optimal conditions. Take into consideration that the PlayStation 2 version also features dumbed-down textures, chopped-up animations, and doesn't have all of the lighting effects and particle effects seen in the other versions, it's easy to see why the PlayStation 2 version of Sonic Heroes is the least recommendable. It's not a technically exciting game to look at, but what it lacks in polygons, high-res textures, complex particle effects, and bump mapping, it makes up for with consistent art design and an exceptionally vibrant color palette that lets you know you're playing a Sonic the Hedgehog game even when you're standing still. Sonic Heroes plays the nostalgia card heavily in the sound design, which features loads of familiar sounds, from the whirling speed-up sounds to the different chimes heard when you pick up or lose rings. Of course, there's also a bevy of classic Sonic tunes. The game's reliance on old sound elements may sound a little cheap, but these sounds are inexorably linked to the Sonic experience, and ultimately, they still work. In fact, the biggest misstep in the sound design for Sonic Heroes is all of the new voice acting that was recorded for the game, which is likely too cute and saccharine sweet for even the most ardent Sonic fans. Sonic Heroes is the closest that Sonic Team has gotten to doing a 3D Sonic the Hedgehog game in the classic 2D fashion. What's most disappointing is that the problems in Sonic Heroes, which include the camera, the controls, and the clipping, are the kinds of things that could be remedied with a few extra months of fine-tuning. In the end, though, it's still a purer, more action-packed Sonic experience than either of the Sonic Adventure games. If you were able to overlook the problems found in those games, Sonic Heroes is easy to recommend. However, if you haven't already been acclimated to the quirks of the 3D Sonic the Hedgehog games, approach this one with a bit of caution. For more details, be sure to check the Sonic Heroes game spaces.